He was expected to succeed Marlon Brando. Rather, a lost and impoverished Tony Franciosa passed away. How did it happen? We now know the unpleasant reality. He was uncontrollable, according to his NBC boss. He was labeled deadly by his Hollywood adversaries. Everything fell apart when his ex-wife, Shelley Winters, revealed his startling liaison with Lauren Bacall. The rumors are worse than the actual story. He was imprisoned for 10 days, and the movie mogul personally ruined his career in retaliation for marrying his daughter. Finally, the biggest scandal in Hollywood is coming to light. Anthony George Papaleo was born Tony Franciosa on October 25, 1928, in Little Italy in New York City. His grandparents had left the little southern Italian town of Melfi in search of a better life. His father was a construction worker. His mom worked as a seamstress. Although the neighborhood was rich in Italian customs, growing up there was not always easy. Money was never plenty, and life was difficult. His parents divorced when Tony was only a year old. The burden of parenting him fell on his mother and aunt. He later acknowledged that he didn't truly know his father and that they didn't spend much time together. He went to his father's apartment once a week to pick up a $8 child support check, but they didn't get along. That absence affected him. Experiencing daily hardships was part of growing up during the Great Depression. His mother put in a lot of overtime and did everything she could to support him. They had to make every dollar count in their tiny, claustrophobic living space. Even the streets of Manhattan were difficult. Battles were frequent, and understanding when to defend your position was frequently essential to survival. Tony picked it up fast. "I learned how to take the initial blow as a child," he subsequently stated. He had that rough, streetwise mindset for the rest of his life. His Italian ancestry gave him a strong sense of identity in spite of everything. It had its own vitality, Little Italy. Families remained connected. Traditions were preserved, and people always took pride in their heritage, regardless of how little they had. He didn't fully comprehend how that upbringing influenced him at the time. He gained emotional depth from it, which would later give his acting a genuine sense. Following his graduation from high school, Tony worked at any jobs he could find. In addition to being a day worker, he was also a cook, dishwasher, ship steward, and welder. He learned something about survival and hard labor from each job. He encountered people from a variety of backgrounds, witnessed their hardships, and gained an understanding of what it took to make a living. Later on, same experience would enable him to portray working-class characters with more realism. At the age of 18, an unforeseen event occurred. He received a free dance lesson invitation from a buddy at the YMCA. While there, he happened onto an audition for Anton Chekhov's The Seagull, even though he had never considered acting. Curious, he made the decision to test it. He was surprised to get a modest role. That was the turning point. He had a new interest for acting. After beginning his studies with Joseph Giegler, he was awarded a scholarship to attend the dramatic workshop in New York City. He studied under Lee Strasberg at the esteemed Actors Studio and gave performances with organizations such as the Cherry Lane Theater. He gained knowledge from some of the top professionals in the field while working with future celebrities like B. Arthur. He was no ordinary optimistic performer. There was a fire within him, an unadulterated intensity that stood out. He changed his name, which was one of his most important choices. Originally born Anthony Papaleo, he chose to use Franciosa, his mother's maiden name, as his stage name. Her sacrifices were honored in this way. She had put in countless hours to raise him by herself. Because he desired to preserve her name. It also offered him a new beginning. In Hollywood, having a name that sounds ethnic can occasionally result in typecasting. Franciosa opened new opportunities while preserving his history. Tony Franciosa joined the Cherry Lane Theater Group in Greenwich Village in 1948, marking the beginning of his acting career. The experimental plays that questioned conventional storytelling were a hallmark of this off-Broadway theater. Rising artists like Michael Gadzio, Kim Stanley, and B. Arthur developed their skills there. Franciosa was exposed to daring and unorthodox performances while working in this creative environment, which influenced his acting style. He was accepted into the Actors Studio, one of the most prominent acting training facilities, in 1950 as a result of his commitment. The studio's leader was Lee Strasberg, instructing some of the most well-known companies in the field. Ben Gazzara, James Dean, and Marlon Brando were among Franciosa's trainers. The demanding setting compelled him to delve deeply into his feelings, a talent that would later become his signature. Every character seemed genuine as he mastered the art of performing with unadulterated enthusiasm. In 1953, he made his Broadway debut in the play End is a Man, which was about corruption in a Southern military academy. Before relocating to Broadway on October 14, the production began its Broadway run on September 15 at Theatre de Lys. Franciosa portrayed Private George Pendleton, a man who was both vulnerable and defiant. Critics who viewed him as a budding star praised his performance because it was exceptional. Ben Gazzara had a key role in the play, and the two of them elevated the drama on stage. This part made Franciosa famous and demonstrated his ability to play nuanced roles. His most significant discovery was made in 1955 while it was raining heavily. The piece addressed a topic that was not frequently discussed in theater at the time: heroin addiction. The character Franciosa portrayed was Polo Pope, who was trying to support his brother Johnny, a war veteran who was addicted. Playing Johnny was Ben Gazzara. And Shelley Winters played the part of Johnny's wife Celia. Michael V. Igazzo's play had 398 performances when it opened on November 9 at the Lyceum Theatre. The intense love and desperation of a sibling attempting to keep his family together were captured in Franciosa's stirring portrayal. His reputation as one of the most intense actors of his time was cemented when his efforts garnered him a nomination for a Tony Award. Hollywood noticed. Franciosa returned in 1957 to play Polo Pope in Fred Zinman's film adaptation of A Hatful of Rain. Don Murray played Johnny in place of Ben Gazzara, while Eva Marie Saint took Shelley Winters' place. This was a minor alteration to the cast. The play's visceral emotion, which made it a Broadway hit, was preserved in the film. Because of his captivating performance, Franciosa won the Venice Film Festival's Volpe Cup for Best Actor. The lone Academy Award nomination he has received in his career came for Best Actor that same year. The film's candid depiction of addiction and its effects on families made it stand out. Rain added a new degree of realism to the film at a period when Hollywood tended to steer clear of such subjects. Franciosa was commended by critics for her ability to portray Polo's inner struggle without going far. The picture was regarded as half fact, half nightmare by the Los Angeles Times, and as a remarkable, disturbing effort by Bosley Crowther of the New York Times. However, Robert Wise's comedy drama This Could Be the Night, which debuted Tony Franciosa in Hollywood in 1957, was the beginning of his career. He portrayed Tony Armati, a suave nightclub manager. Yet uncertain. The movie, which was based on Cornelia Baird Gross's short stories, stars Gene Simmons and Paul Douglas. Franciosa's performance was exceptional. He stood out from other up-and-coming actors due to his innate charisma and streetwise attitude. Critics took note because he had the ability to be both intense and humorous at the same time. In A Face in the Crowd, he had a far more serious role that same year. Carried out by Ilya Kazan. The movie focused on the influence of the media and the potential risks of celebrity. Andy Griffith portrayed the title character, a vagrant who rose to fame on television, Lonesome Rhodes. However, Franciosa portrayed Mel Miller, a writer who recognized the duplicity of the act. Rhodes was ultimately exposed by Miller, who ultimately brought him to his knees. Griffith's performance was renowned. However, Franciosa demonstrated that he could compete with the greatest in Hollywood. The fact that these two movies came out in the same year demonstrated his versatility. He was joining James Dean and Marlon Brando as members of the Performers Studio's new generation of performers. Franciosa continued demonstrating his abilities after his impressive start. George Cukor's Wild as the Wind, in which he starred, was released in 1957. Ben was his character. A young ranch worker who, while being married to Anthony Quinn's Gino, fell in love with Anna Magnani's character. The film was a passionate, treacherous love story set against the bleak backdrop of Nevada. Magnani and Franciosa clicked well together, and his performance demonstrated that he could compete with more seasoned actors. He faced the lengthy, sweltering summer of 1958. Martin Ritt is the director. Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, and Orson Welles appeared in the movie, which was based on stories by William Faulkner. Franciosa portrayed Jody Varner, the insecure son of prominent businessman Will Varner, played by Welles. Jody found it difficult to get his father's acceptance and felt that Paul Newman's self-assured wanderer, Ben Quick, was more important than him. Jody felt desperate, and Franciosa made it seem real. The movie was popular. And it assisted Ritz in reviving his career when he was placed on a Hollywood blacklist. Later same year, Franciosa portrayed Francisco Goya in the historical drama The Naked Maya, which told the story of the well-known Spanish artist and his passionate relationship with Eva Gardner's Duchess of Alba. Despite production delays, Franciosa received $250,000, a substantial sum at the time, to wait for the movie. When it was eventually released, the movie did not do well at the box office. But he demonstrated his ability to portray complex and conflicted individuals in his role as Goya. Joseph Anthony directed Franciosa's 1959 performance, which was one of his most impactful. During the McCarthy era, the movie followed Sam Lawson, an actor struggling to succeed in Hollywood. It was a demanding role that portrayed the hardships and sacrifices of a person striving for achievement in an industry that is harsh. Although he co-starred with Shirley MacLaine and Dean Martin, Franciosa was the star of the show. The Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Motion Picture went to him for his performance. Drama. He had cemented his status as one of Hollywood's leading men at the young age of 31. 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Costume Design, Best Cinematography, and Best Art Direction were also received by career. But what really stood out was Franciosa's unvarnished and passionate performance. Franciosa gained recognition for her portrayal of tumultuous, emotional characters that people found relatable. An excellent example was his performance in the 1957 film A Hatful of Rain. Polo Pope, a sympathetic but irritated brother attempting to support his sibling in overcoming a heroin addiction, was portrayed by him. It was among his most passionate performances. And he was nominated for a Best Actor Academy Award for it. Despite having the capacity to become a Hollywood icon, Tony Franciosa's fury frequently got in the way. He clashed with co-stars, directors, and producers on occasion. When he didn't get his way, he preferred to pout in his dressing room. He wouldn't only debate if he didn't agree with the director. He would just refuse to do as he was told. There was more than one instance of this issue. His reputation grew as a result. Franciosa appeared on the set of The Name of the Game, an NBC series that aired from 1968 to 1971 and featured Robert Stack and Gene Barry. Although it was difficult working with him, the event was a success. During the second season, Universal Pictures felt they had had enough of his outbursts. Terminated him. The harm was done, even though Franciosa later claimed he had received unfair treatment. Hollywood had characterized him as challenging. It wasn't just disagreements that made him angry. In 1966, James Garner witnessed a different side of him on the set of A Man Could Get Killed. During battle scenes, Franciosa wasn't holding back, which meant that stunt performers were genuinely suffering injuries. When things got out of hand, Garner took over. There was a violent altercation between the two. Such incidents hampered Franciosa's ability to secure stable employment. By the late 1960s, he was having trouble getting big parts. He had to accept employment on European films in order to remain relevant when Hollywood companies lost interest. In a 1996 interview, Franciosa said that he hadn't been prepared for stardom. "I was too immature and didn't handle the pressure well," he added. However, it was too late by that point. The huge opportunities have long since passed. He had issues off of the set as well. Due to his rage, Franciosa ran afoul of the law in April 1957. His Oscar-nominated performance in A Hatful of Rain had catapulted him to celebrity at the moment. That month, he argued with a photographer outside a Hollywood event. Franciosa lost control after one of the photographers who had been harassing him went too far. The man was publicly punched by him. It was not only negative press that cost him that moment. After being charged with violence, he received a 10-day term in the Los Angeles County Jail. Despite serving time, Franciosa continued to land major roles. In 1957 and 1958, he starred in Wild as the Wind and The Long Hot Summer, respectively. The event, however, was never forgotten by the media. Rumors about his rage also persisted. Studios began to fear that he was too erratic. He was no longer merely a charismatic performer. He posed a danger. Another setback followed. Franciosa married Judy Balaban, the daughter of Paramount Pictures president Barney Balaban, in 1961. This should have been an entry into the affluent circles of Hollywood. It might have cost him his career instead. The marriage infuriated Judy's father, according to her memoir Bridesmaids. He secretly barred Franciosa from important posts, according to several. Franciosa had risen through the ranks before they were married. He had recently received a 1959 Golden Globe for his career. Although he had great potential as a leading man, his career began to deteriorate after 1961. Not many high-profile positions were available. He began taking on responsibilities abroad and working on smaller projects by the middle of the 1960s. Some insiders in the industry thought Barney Balaban was involved. It was never verified by Franciosa. However, he implied in subsequent interviews that he had been abandoned by Hollywood executives. One blunder wasn't the only thing that led to his downfall. It was a result of poor choices, negative publicity, and strained relationships. Talent isn't always enough in Hollywood. An actor must be able to traverse the system, have the correct reputation, and have the right contacts. Franciosa managed to secure some noteworthy roles in spite of the industry reaction. George Roy Hill directed the 1962 film Period of Adjustment, in which he appeared. It was a comedy-drama film that examined the problems of two married couples and was based on a Tennessee Williams play. Franciosa portrayed Ralph Bites, a disgruntled spouse, trapped between the expectations of society and family conflicts. In contrast to his reputation for playing dramatic roles, the movie allowed him to showcase his humorous abilities. For her performance, his co-star Jane Fonda was nominated for a Golden Globe, and her career took off. Franciosa was less fortunate. Hollywood's perception of him remained largely unchanged despite the fact that the Period of Adjustment wasn't a failure. His opportunities had already been restricted by his reputation. Getting movie roles was getting more difficult by the middle of the 1960s. In an attempt to start over, Franciosa chose to try television. He was the main character of the ABC sitcom Valentine's Day in 1964. He portrayed Valentine Farrow, a slick-talking publishing executive who managed to combine romance and work. The supporting cast was excellent. Among them is Jack Sue, his devoted servant and poker partner. Franciosa was able to demonstrate his charisma and comedic timing, which had not been properly utilized in his film career. But the program never gained a following, even with good performers and clever writing. It was a one-season show. An additional setback was the cancellation. Franciosa continued to look for professional stability. In 1968, he was cast as Jeff Dillon in NBC's The Name of the Game, a television program that was unlike anything else. It followed three distinct main protagonists, each with a unique backstory. Franciosa portrayed a reporter for People magazine who conducted investigations. Gene Barry played a strong publishing magnate. Senior editor Robert Stack assumed responsibility for combating corruption and crime. One of them was highlighted in each episode, making a new, surprising show that captivated audiences. Jeff Dillon, the character played by Franciosa, was brash and resolute. He was an uncompromising journalist who was willing to push the bounds of ethics. Social justice, corporate corruption, political scandals, and other pressing concerns of the day were all covered in his programs. The enthusiasm in his portrayal made Dillon one of the show's most interesting characters. September 20th marked the premiere of the series. 1968, and consisted of 3 seasons and 76 episodes. It was well received by critics and viewers alike for its timely stories and excellent production value. It became one of NBC's most popular dramas during its existence, and Franciosa had a significant role in that achievement. Off-screen, however, things were different. It was known that Franciosa was a pain to deal with. He frequently got into arguments with directors and producers because of his temper, which caused issues on set. On certain days, he would not leave his dressing room if he was treated disrespectfully. When Universal Pictures urged him to accept a pay cut in 1970 because of financial worries, it was one of the most significant disagreements. No, he said. He was fired by the studio after 2 seasons as the dispute turned into a furious argument. They mentioned. The official explanation was inconsistent behavior. Franciosa then asserted that he had received unfair treatment and that the studio was seeking a reason to fire him. The game's reputation persisted for an additional season after he left, with Darren McGavin and Robert Wagner serving as stand-ins. However, many viewers thought the show had changed. Its advantage diminished somewhat with Franciosa's absence. The series never truly recovered from the pivotal moment of his termination. Franciosa pursued other endeavors, although none were as successful as his initial ones. He starred in Search, a science fiction series about high-tech private investigators who use cutting-edge technology, in 1972. Although its concept seemed promising, it only ran for 1 season, consisting of 23 episodes. He played the lead in the 1975 television series Matt Helm, which was based on the spy novel by Donald Hamilton. From September 20, 1975 to January 3, 1976, the show ran, however it was terminated after only 13 episodes. His final significant TV performance was in the Aaron Spelling-produced drama Finder of Lost Loves on ABC in 1984. He portrayed private investigator Carrie Maxwell, who assisted people in re-establishing romantic relationships. Famous guests appeared on the show. Even the theme song, sung by Dionne Warwick, did not attract a large audience. Before being cancelled, it ran for 23 episodes in a single season. Franciosa never took a break from his labor, but his career never again rose to the pinnacles of the game. Although his reputation made it difficult for him to land long-term assignments, his brilliance was evident. Rather than wait for calls that might never come, he took a risk. He established a new life as an actor in European cinema after leaving the US. Although his Hollywood fame did not return, the change allowed him to take on jobs that suited his aggressive approach and afforded him consistent employment. In 1980, he played the lead role in Alberto Laciuata's Italian drama, La Cicala, about cricket. The character he portrayed was Annabelle Marighetti, who was entangled in a sad affair with Wilma Malinverni. An ex-singer became a prostitute. Verna Lisi earned big prizes in Italy for her portrayal of Wilma. Franciosa's role, however, was equally potent. His character struggled to escape a life full of mistakes while carrying the burdens of love and remorse. The film, which was set in post-war Italy, examined themes of love, betrayal, and despair. Although it didn't make it to audiences outside, it was a critical triumph in Italy. Franciosa featured 2 years later in Dario Argento's 1982 thriller Tenebrae. After his 1977 supernatural horror smash Suspiria, Argento returned to the giallo genre with this film. Franciosa portrayed Peter Neal, a mystery writer from the United States who traveled to Rome to promote his most recent work. However, a killer begins drawing inspiration from his manuscript as soon as he gets there. 4 actual killings. He was able to combine charm and paranoia in the part as his character sought to learn the truth while turning into a suspect himself. Thanks to its sophisticated aesthetics and profound psychological content, the movie became a cult classic. Franciosa gave his character a multi-layered, surprising vibe with his acting, which strengthened the plot's twist. Even though he landed decent jobs in Europe, his US stardom was never fully recovered. Although the movies he worked on were well respected, they lacked the monetary success to restore his reputation. His strong, emotional, and frequently erratic acting approach kept him in a certain niche while making him ideal for complex characters. He played Emilio Brentani in Senilita, Careless, 1962, a character who was insecure and self-conscious. Although his portrayal received recognition for its unadulterated passion, the character's hardships made him difficult for broader audiences to identify with. He contributed an energy that made his roles distinctive in horror movies like Web of the Spider, 1971. However, he was not able to regain his Hollywood prominence due to the size of the projects. His previous conflicts with producers and directors also followed him. American studios were reluctant to take another chance on him, despite the fact that he collaborated with reputable European filmmakers. By the time the 1980s ended, Hollywood had changed. Despite the fact that he was no longer a major celebrity, he was nonetheless respected in European film circles. Tony Franciosa's romantic life mirrored the drama of his on-screen personas. He had 4 previous marriages, so he was accustomed to passion, strife, and controversy. His romance with actress Shelley Winters was the most notorious. The couple got married on May 4, 1957, after meeting while working on A Hatful of Rain. Both their volatility and chemistry were indisputable. Their 3-year marriage was a flurry of passion, arguments, and public drama that garnered media attention nearly as frequently as their motion pictures. Their relationship, according to Winters, was a combination of low comedy, great emotion, and fun in arguments. However, beyond the glitz, there were more serious issues. Franciosa's infidelity and rage weakened their relationship. His alleged romance with Lauren Bacall was one particular affair that made headlines in Hollywood. In a scene from a movie, Bacall supposedly called Winters to complain that Franciosa had been late for their date. The 2 females spoke in a heated exchange, adding to the turmoil that surrounds their marriage. Never one to hold back, Winters later commented that Franciosa would have been the team captain if sex had been an Olympic sport. Franciosa had no less complicated second marriage. In 1961, he married Judy Balaban, the daughter of Paramount Pictures' influential president Barney Balaban. On paper, it appeared to be a perfect fit for Hollywood. Judy's father, however, was not happy behind the scenes. Barney Balaban was accused of deliberately trying to ruin Franciosa's career as retaliation for her marriage to his daughter. There was no doubting that throughout their marriage, Franciosa's once promising career in Hollywood declined considerably, whether it was true or not. Even though he won a Golden Globe for his work in 1959, the large offers began to come in less frequently. Rumor had it that Balaban had closed doors for the actor by using his power. Nina, the couple's only child, was born, but the marriage ended in 1967. Although Balaban's downfall during that time was difficult to ignore, Franciosa never openly acknowledged whether Balaban had anything to do with his career difficulties. His tale served as a reminder of the power of interpersonal ties to both build and ruin a Hollywood career. When Franciosa married Rita Thiel in 1970, she was seeking security. He found that the German fashion model served as a stabilizing influence in his life. On November 27, 1970, the day of their marriage, his last episode of The Name of the Game was broadcast. He had spent a large portion of his career with unpredictable behavior, which led to his termination from the show. Rita, however, was not intimidated. She supported him despite his difficulties, urging him to get help for his anger management issues and assisting him in controlling the emotional instability that had destroyed previous marriages. She added that he was never trained to control his temper. Changed him significantly. We still occasionally have fun arguments, but I can yell back at him. Franciosa spent the remainder of her life married to him. Together, they had 2 sons, Christopher and Marco, who went on to work in organic farming. Who pursued a career in acting like his father. Despite all of his previous problems, Franciosa seems to find some calm in his senior years. One last turn of events followed. Shelley Winters died on January 14, 2006, when she was 85 years old. Franciosa passed away from a stroke on January 19, just 5 days later. Interest in their tumultuous past was rekindled by their deaths occurring so close to one another. Even though they had only been married for 3 years, their legacies were inextricably interwoven. Both had a reputation as passionate, erratic figures in Hollywood, began their careers with dramatic, powerful performances, and were students of the Actors Studio. Winters took home 2 Academy Awards, and Franciosa received recognition for his career and unadulterated brilliance in movies like A Hatful of Rain.